Hey guys, I'm Ash.
And I'm Pete.
We're two friends with a combo of 7 kids ranging from toddlers to 20s and 2 crazy husbands.
Our paths were not easy. With childhood battle wounds, divorce, second marriages and all, we somehow found each other. And together we talk real life, laugh, cry, and figure out how to survive the day.
Music is by Dust Bowl Champion. To hear Dust Bowl Champion's newest hits, search Dust Bowl Champion on Spotify. Hey guys, it's Ash and P.
Hey.
And we are so excited to be back for another week of our past.
Yeah. Our swap stories.
Yes. So we will do another warning again, just for anyone who didn't catch last week's episode. For those of you who did, thank you for listening to my experience. But we will be talking about sexual abuse. So if you are not wanting anyone else to hear, maybe you have little ears that you don't want hearing this is your warning. This week we are going to dive into P's story.
Yeah.
She's so excited. I know. She just can't wait.
Yeah. It's important though.
It is really important. We both experienced, being molested, and I mean, we have that in common, but I guess the things that took place and how things were, I don't want to say handled, but maybe you have a better word for that. How?
Well, I mean, it kind of is the way things were handled. You know?
Yeah. Just so different.
So different.
Yeah. So,
the situations were different.
Yeah.
Yes. The after
math was different.
Was very different.
Yeah. So I think anyone who has had any type of abuse there, I think all of those stories are so important, because I think that's the only way, as a society we grow, and we hopefully get rid of it, and we
educate ourselves.
Yeah. Educate ourselves. And like I said, I wish that I just wish that the stigma that comes with it just didn't exist. So hopefully sharing our stories will encourage others to share stories, or if somebody, mentions something, maybe they kind of see it in a different light. Maybe they can help in a different way, or, it is something like Priscilla said, has anybody said anything to you since last week? And I said, no, but I'm also, that's not something that I would expect, just because it is a topic that a lot of people don't want to address. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's always different topics that maybe you want to say something to someone, but you don't know how to say it.
Right.
You don't, if I say something, am I going to offend them? Am I going to bring up something that they don't want to talk about?
Yeah. And look, the whole situation and the topic can make people very uncomfortable too.
Yes.
Whether or not you've gone through that.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably more so for people who haven't.
Yeah.
It makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
Because they don't know really what to say.
Yeah.
And if you have gone through it, maybe if you don't say anything, sometimes it's just because maybe that's it's not necessarily something you want to talk about.
Right.
So
right.
You don't want, you're not going to bring it up to someone else.
Right. Yeah.
Their situation.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, I feel like we both are in a place with it where we can be vocal about it.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we treat it any less. It's still hard. It's still an ugly topic.
It is.
But we also know that it's part of our past. It's made us who we are.
Yeah.
And we know that there are so many other people that go through it.
Yes.
We're not the only ones.
Right.
Our story is not
uncommon. It's so common.
It is.
You know.
And the way things are handled or the people that it affects, of course, those in the situation are different. How far things go are different. I mean, there are people that are sexually abused for years, their childhood, you know. I mean, there's just so many different levels of it. And it's, I think, an important topic because even if you did not go through it, and male or female, if you did not go through it, you have to be aware of surroundings. And just kind of like the last episode, and if you didn't listen to the last episode, go back and listen to the episode, because in the middle of our episode, I kind of had an awakening moment as a parent. And really that could be for you internally too. Like just to you as a person, whether or not you have kids, like just being like, oh, if a child kind of says something kind of off, you need to be able to recognize that and pick up on it and say something to someone. Because if you don't, you might miss a window of saving a child from a situation.
Exactly.
You know, like your cousin speaking up could have saved you from it continuing for years, so much longer.
Right.
Had she not said anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's being cautious of things like that too, because like it or not, it happens so often.
It does.
And I don't know the answer to stopping that.
I know. It's just, it's so ugly. And I mean, I know molestation isn't the same as like sex trafficking, but I feel like all of these types of abuses are so overlooked and kind of they're swept under the rug. Punishment for things like are not, it's not big enough to me. In my opinion, the severity of the punishment is weak.
It is. It totally is.
So it's like, I mean, I think there has to be a change beyond us.
And, you know, and I feel like when people say like, when they, you know, I know I've heard the word predator before, right? And it becomes part of a storyline or part of a story or whatever, or a topic. But these people really are predators because they're preying on innocent people, young people sometimes, but whether it's a child or a young girl or young man, they prey on the weaknesses of these innocent people. And and they play mind games with them. And they get them into these awful situations that I mean, it happens just so often. I mean, it really does make me sick just to think of how many times are we going to hear that someone's been arrested for, you know, sex trafficking or abusing their daughter or their stepdaughter or their stepson or whatever. And you hear over and over, they get out.
Yeah, they do. They get out, and we'll kind of cover a little bit of that in your story. And it's just, you know, I know that there are things like Megan's Law where sex offenders have to register. But really, unless someone's looking at that, how much is it really impacting those people that are on there?
Right.
Okay, maybe if, you know, they're getting a job and a background check's being done. Okay, I can see that. But aside from that, what is really stopping them from doing it to someone else?
Well, and you know, it's interesting that you say that. And as we go into my story, I'll tell you that I've often wondered, you know, they're not supposed to like live in the neighborhood near so many yards from a school and so many this and that. But they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
It happens.
Right.
They're in, and a lot of times, and we just recently had this discussion after last week, it's like, how come they still get to come in contact with the victim?
Right.
Why isn't there an automatic restraining order for them to not be near the victim
Right.
anymore, ever? You can no longer be near your victim.
Right. It's insane to me. And I know I need to look into that more. That's something I'm putting serious thought into because it's bizarre to me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I guess if you shoot someone and you get out, are you allowed to go around them? Maybe other crimes you're not prevented from being around victims either. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that type of thing is just, I would assume in something where there's an assault like that, someone shooting someone, I would assume there's probably a restraining order that is provided. But yeah, it's just odd that it's not something that's an automatic requirement of you being set free or whatever, So that's crazy. So yeah, but now I think we get to go into Priscilla's story. So let's start with how old you were.
So I was 10.
So 10 years old.
10.
And it was your relation to the person?
He was my stepdad.
Yeah. So that's
the only, my if you listen to the beginning of my background, in the first couple of episodes, my dad and my mom split up when I was a baby. They met in high school. She got pregnant in high school. They split up, and my stepdad and my mom, who is not my stepdad now.
Right.
Yeah. He's not my stepdad now, but he and my mom were together since I was 2. So most would say the dad that raised me. I didn't really have a big relationship with my dad. It was pretty off and on when he was in and out of jail and stuff. So I was never close to my biological father.
Right. So that's kind of surprising that he waited until you were about 10.
Yeah. I don't remember him ever doing anything before that. Never. But I do know that at the time, I think I put 2 and 2 together, a little bit later. And when I say a little later, not much later, but I think that he was using drugs at the time as well.
Oh, wow.
Not to say that that's an excuse for
right.
It, but I think.
But you think before he hadn't been.
And I don't know. I'd have to believe that he probably did here and there. It's weird because my mom is so not that kind of person at all.
Yeah.
She's not a partier. She's not to say she doesn't, have her wine or whatever,
right.
But she's not like that. She's never been the mom that even though she was young, leave me with whoever so she can go out and party.
Yeah.
She's never been that type of person. But for whatever reason, she just kind of was with guys that were. I don't know, because I don't really know my dad and her. I don't know that dynamic, what that was. I just never had a relationship with him. But thinking back, thinking of the fact that my mom was really this good girl.
Yeah.
That got pregnant young and everything, but she was this good girl. And then all of a sudden she's her child's dad is
yeah,
in and out of jail and stuff. And
right.
Then my stepdad, her boyfriend at the time, kind of came and stepped in, and they were together a while before they got married. I think they were probably together like 6 years before they got married.
So
something like that.
So you were about 8, probably?
Probably maybe 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like it had been a while because maybe 5. She knew him from high school. She knew his sister. She actually was really good friends with his sister in high school. And so there was kind of a little bit of a past there as far as like just kind of knowing the same people and stuff.
Okay.
And, you know, at this point, we had already kind of like lived a life together as kind of a family.
Right. Yeah.
We had gone and moved to Oregon for a bit. We'd come back.
So nothing during that time?
No.
Oh, wow.
Mm-mm. Drinker. He was a drinker. Always drank heavy.
Okay.
But nothing weird with me. Nothing that seemed odd or anything like that. I have many pictures of me as a little girl with him, you know, like normal looking almost, you know?
Yeah.
And then everything changed.
So let's go over how it came out.
So I was so I was 10 and we used to be very involved with a church. We would go to church all the time. I mean, I think they got married actually when we started to get really into going to church. So we would go to a Christian church. We were really involved, working in the nursery, working with, the kids, involved in everything, all the aspects, ushers, everything, right? We were all really involved. And my best friend at the time was the pastor's daughter. And I just remember, we had never, we talked about this before. We didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
We never had a lot of money, it didn't matter, whatever.
Yeah.
And I never had my own room. And we always lived in apartments, moved from apartment to apartment. And my mom and her husband at the time, my stepdad, had rented a house. And this was like the first time I had my own room. I had my own room. The boys had their own rooms. Like they shared a room together.
Okay. But you guys had like 3 bedrooms, so everyone had their own.
It was awesome, right?
Yeah.
And that's when everything happened.
Do you think that it's because he had more of an opportunity, or do you think that it was more likely that he had started doing drugs?
I don't know. He cheated on my mom throughout their entire marriage.
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't know in the very, very beginning, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. But he cheated on her all the time.
Okay.
And always with a younger girl.
Like really young?
Like 20.
Okay.
I mean, still an adult,
Yeah.
like 19, 20.
Okay.
But so significantly younger than he was. So I don't know what was going on already there,
Yeah.
But I had gone to my friend, the pastor's daughter, had gone over to her house and stayed the night, and I broke down.
Do you remember the conversation that you had with her?
I remember being in her room and being scared to tell her, and I remember bawling my eyes out.
And then she asked what was wrong, or? And
then I told her. I started to tell her, and she started to cry, and I remember her telling me, I need to go. I need to tell my mom. I need to get my mom.
Oh, well, that's really good. I mean, at 10,
I know.
Because my cousin was older, but at 10, do you know to tell an adult?
I know.
Because you hadn't told an adult. And
I think she might have been almost, if not 12, she might have been almost 12. She was a little bit older than me.
Okay.
maybe a year or two older than me. But she did. She went and grabbed her mom, and I remember having to tell her mom. And
do you remember that conversation? Like how it went?
Yeah.
How was the mom?
Crying.
Was she comforting to you?
She was
or
holding me, hugging me, and she just kept telling me, like, it's gonna be okay. I have to call your mom, we're gonna talk to your mom. And I remember I was nervous for her to tell my mom, of course.
Yeah.
Right? How do you tell your mom that?
Yeah.
Do you think her husband is doing that?
So do you think that that's maybe why you hadn't told your mom?
Yeah, I had no idea how to tell her. And I honestly thought that if I told her, I didn't know if she would believe me.
Okay.
I just didn't know. I mean, I was thinking, why would she believe me? And what if he tells her that I think that those are normal thoughts for most kids who go through that, where it's like, what if he tells her that I'm lying and then she doesn't believe me? And then what's going to happen to me?
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that being, I don't remember a lot, of course, but I could see how that could be concerning because, it's like, I'm sure it's a concern for even adults who are abused. Mm-hmm. But as a kid, I think we feel like, who's going to believe me over him? Right. Like, he's an adult. He's he's a husband, he's a parent, and they're just going to believe me. Right. Which I think, and this is why I feel like, okay, there are not PSAs on sexual abuse.
No,
there's not. There's PSA on drug abuse. There's PSA on all types of things, never sexual abuse. But I think that is something that it's important for victims to know that. And I think nowadays, in most cases, most people are going to believe the victim over. And sometimes it's not good because sometimes people do lie,
right, Right.
But I think obviously for the people who are being honest and for true victims, it's so important that they know that. But that's a scary thing to share.
Yeah.
And, can we share what I read in the police report?
Yeah.
So Priscilla has her police report, and I read it, and it actually said that she didn't tell her mom because she didn't, I think it was, she was afraid to lose another dad, or she didn't want to lose another dad. So that was probably, you probably don't recall that
I
now,
don't
but
at all.
At that time, that was a concern of yours too.
Yeah.
So it's like, we sometimes hear about abuse that happens and we wonder, how could they, why wouldn't they say something? Why wouldn't they this? Why wouldn't they that? And it's, that just goes to show there's a lot of things that go into it,
Yeah.
And
I already had no dad.
Yeah. He was the only dad that you really knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, when I read that, that was the most heartbreaking thing, I think, because I think of you being a little kid and you thinking that, like, he was the one who had done something wrong, but you're the one worried about it. You're worried about, like, losing a father and that type of thing. And I don't know. That's just heartbreaking to me that is where your mind was, because something way bigger was happening.
Yeah.
And, it's like, oh gosh, little Priscilla, I wish I could just squeeze her, give her a big old hug, poor thing.
I know.
Yeah. So
she was so sweet.
She was. Now
look at me.
I know. This is what it's done. No, but really, that's a lot.
It is. It is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And I didn't remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And I will have to go into reasons why I have that police report. But
we will.
But I've just kept it in a folder, put away, but I've always known I've had it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I I can't remember the last time I read it. It had to be about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I read it the last.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
So your friend's mom, the pastor's wife, says, we need to call your mom. And so she calls your mom.
And basically what she did was, I didn't want to tell my mom. So her and the pastor told my mom.
Okay. So you weren't in the room when
I
they
wasn't
told
in
her.
the room when they told her. And then they called me out to talk to her after they told her.
And how is your mom?
Bawling.
Okay, of course.
Bawling. She was bawling, and she hugged me, and she, apologized for everything, and she believed me.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the biggest thing, was because I was so concerned that she wasn't going to, or she was going to, be like, no, I don't know.
Yeah. You must be confused.
Right. But she didn't. And she accepted it right away. And we called the police. And I remember the police being there. And I remember having to talk to them.
Do you remember? I know you remember talking to them, but do you remember the things that you said to them?
Mm-mm.
No, you just remember them being there. Mm-hmm. I don't remember either. I just was curious if maybe you do.
Yeah.
Okay, so the police come, they take the report, and then what happens?
And then I don't know at what point we go back home. Okay. Because I think if I can recall, I believe they went out to arrest him.
So he was at home at the time?
I don't know. Maybe not, maybe at work. He had he never really had a career. He had jobs.
Yeah.
So
maybe he was at a job.
He could have been at a job of some sort. But I remember it being evening already by the time the police left and stuff. So I don't remember.
Do you think maybe he was at home because were the boys at home? Your mom probably didn't bring them with her, did she?
I don't remember.
I mean, she could have.
I know they weren't there. I know
they weren't at the house.
They weren't at the house.
Okay.
Well, at least not in my from what I remember being in the living room, and I can picture everything. They were not in my. And I think that the pastor and his wife would have not had them there.
Okay. Maybe they were with an aunt or something.
Yeah. Well, my mom had a friend. It was a lady that went to church with us that watched the boys, and she was really good with the boys.
So maybe it was that, because I imagine the boys probably weren't with their dad when he was arrested either.
Right.
So, okay.
Yeah.
And so it was late when you guys got back home?
I don't remember going back home. I remember then it kind of gets jumbled, It's I don't remember everything. Yeah. I remember we stayed and we lived in the house for a little bit still.
All of you, or you mean just your mom and the boys?
I remember my mom throwing everything, all his stuff out. I remember her throwing all his stuff out.
Okay.
But then I remember him coming back. And he didn't move back right away, but he would be back. I remember coming out of my room once, and which at this point I'm I never want to have my own room ever again.
Right. Yeah.
But I remember coming out of my room once, and he was sitting in the living room.
Do you remember what you thought or what you felt?
Yeah.
How, what?
I remember being so angry.
Okay, that's good.
And I started crying, and I went to my room and I started crying. And, my mom's thing was he was there to see the boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so angry with that.
Right. Yeah.
And this is going to be tough. I think we might need to take a break before I continue.
Okay, let's take a break then.
Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back.
Yes, and we left off. Priscilla mentioned that she came out of her room one time after everything had happened. He had been gone. He wasn't living there, but he was on the couch, and you were very angry, and you went into your bedroom and started crying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is hard for me to talk about a little bit, just because I don't want it to. I never want anyone to view my mom in a negative light.
Right.
But like we've said many times throughout our podcast, it's not about the other people, it's our story.
Right.
And they just happen to be part of our story.
Right.
And in order for me to tell my story, I have to tell it.
Yes.
You know?
And Priscilla's mom is a wonderful woman.
And
they're very, very close.
We're very close. We're like sisters. And
yes.
I love her. I love her so much. And I've forgiven and healed, and we're good.
Yes.
We are good.
So please know that, because one of Priscilla's concerns why this is hard is she's afraid the way people are going to look at her mom.
Because it is rough to hear.
It is rough to hear. I mean, it's a tough thing for sure, but it is also not, I mean, your mom feels bad about it.
Yes.
And I mean, if it had happened now, obviously things would be completely different.
Right.
There's been a lot of things that have gone on in growth and kind of like separation and coming back together and all of that. But in the end, it's still P's mom.
Yeah.
She's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
She's a loving, great woman.
Yeah.
So I just have to say that part of it, because it is going to be rough.
Yes.
And people might think, what in the world?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I remember, and this is where I say, like, you know, it's part of like your childhood where things like, you don't remember every single thing, right?
Right.
But you remember bits and pieces.
Yes.
And I remember crying in my room, and I remember like going into the corner of my room and crying. And I remember my mom coming in and talking to me, and I wouldn't stop crying. And I couldn't catch my breath. I was crying so hard. And she told me, Priscilla, you need to get over it.
Ouch.
And I think at that point I knew like I wasn't going to have compassion, or not compassion, but there wasn't going to be compassion towards what had happened.
Yeah.
I was just going to have to deal with it on my own.
That's rough.
And to this day, I mean, it's kind of like a thing between me and my aunt. We always say like it's my mom's quote, like, get over it, which now we can joke about it.
Right. Years have passed. It's okay to joke about now.
But that was really hard.
Yeah.
That was really hard, because I was just like, how in the world are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, he's here in the house, and he would come and visit a lot. Wow. And some couple of times stay the night.
Oh gosh.
And I was suicidal.
You were? You've never told me that.
I was. I tried to run away.
Okay.
I would go in the kitchen and like, this is super terrible to talk about, but I would look at the knives, or I would look and think like, how could I?
Oh gosh.
But
never was, I think that luckily there was too much. There was too much of God in my heart to carry me through that, because it was so dark. That was a very, very lonely time.
Yeah.
Of all the times that I could say, yeah, in my marriage I was lonely or whatever, that's nothing compared to that moment.
Yeah.
Those times.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell anyone. My family, my mom was very hush hush about it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if she was still kind of, she never divorced him at that point. Like, there was no mention of divorce.
Yeah.
I think she had thought about legal separation for a while, but my family didn't know. So the only
even your aunt?
No.
Oh wow.
The only people that knew were the pastor and his daughter. Their daughter, my friend, and my mom.
Wow. And did you guys remain involved in the church?
We did.
And did he?
No, he didn't.
Was he involved previously?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's hard because I was I was kind of disappointed for a long time with this is where it's like I know it's a catch here, but I was kind of disappointed with the church. I don't want to say convincing, but almost like telling my mom, like, you need to get divorced. Like, you need to leave him.
They did tell her that,
they
did?
They
did not.
They did not.
Did they encourage her to stay married?
To pray for him. It was to pray for him. And I feel that although they had great intentions, and there were some great people, and the pastor and his wife were good people. Everyone there was good people, but I feel that and granted, they didn't know everything, not everybody knew everything, but they became, it was this church of like, your husband could go do anything, and all the wives just like stayed and prayed for their husband.
Oh, wow.
And it was like we had another friend that was going there, and she was awesome. She had kids. Her husband was involved with the church. He stopped going. He was getting involved in drugs and all this stuff and everything. And it was just like, the encouragement was always just to pray for him.
Wow.
And
I can't imagine that.
And it was like, I had a really hard time with the Christian church. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie. I still kind of do a little on that, because it put a sourness in my heart about, like, everything.
Yeah.
And you're telling her to pray for him. There's no prayer I'm sorry. And look, God can do, I know he can do anything.
Right.
I know he can.
Yeah.
But it takes the person wanting it too and accepting it.
Yeah.
And someone like that doesn't want it. And I knew that. I knew the kind of person he was.
Yeah.
And forever, you're talking, just to give you an idea, they didn't get divorced until I was in college.
So 10 years.
Yeah. So, and there's so much of what happened, we'll go into that, the next step of that. But it was very hard for me to get over that, because when I finally became kind of like a teenager and kind of was able to start deciding if I was going to go or not go to church, I didn't want to go anymore.
Right.
I didn't want to go. And
I could see that.
It wasn't because I didn't love God. It wasn't because I didn't want to be involved in my church. It was because I was kind of bitter towards their view on it.
Yeah. I could see that. And I think, like, I look and I think, gosh, like, there's no way that, like, our church would think that that's okay. they would be like, what
And
in
I
the
know
world?
that they never want to condone divorce,
But they do say there are occasions where that does need to happen.
Yeah.
And abuse is one of them.
And they did counsel. I think they were doing like counseling for a little bit with the pastor and his wife for a little while. And I don't know, that fizzled or what the heck happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the other part of that is that, we talked about you went to
therapy and you didn't.
I didn't.
You didn't even do any type of any counseling of any kind.
None.
And I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I really, really do.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that I didn't go because I don't think my mom wanted me to talk to anybody about it. Because I don't think she wanted people to know.
That is embarrassing. Because I feel like, even though she stayed with him, obviously there was something in her head. She was ashamed. Otherwise, it wouldn't be something that was hush hush.
Right.
It wouldn't be something that she didn't want you talking to a therapist about.
Right.
There's obvious signs that she was not okay with it. She knew it wasn't okay.
It wasn't okay. I remember one time afterwards, we lived with my grandfather, which we did a lot when we grew up. We live in different apartments. We live with grandpa, whatever. And I had a diary. And I left my diary out on accident, like in the living room or something.
Oh, no.
And I had written stuff in there of stuff that happened. And she came home and found it and flipped her shit.
No.
And was like so pissed because how could I write all of that? And how could I put it and leave it for someone to write? And it wasn't because, obviously now I know it's like I'm getting in trouble and I'm getting, yelled at, which is only making me more angry towards her.
Right. Yeah.
But it's because she didn't want someone else to find out.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Which that's sad that, I'm glad that you were, this might sound bad. I'm glad that you were more angry about it. I'm glad that you weren't feeling, I feel like anger is a different kind of pain than sadness pain.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it wasn't I'm sure it made you somewhat sad because you're how can you be there's some sadness and anger, I think, because there's something bad, right?
Right.
But it's different than you just crying and feeling so hurt. There's a little more strength in anger sometimes,
You're
right. But that's literally the only therapy you had.
That's it.
And
so,
it
didn't even last because she threw my diary away, and I was never able to keep a diary again.
Oh.
But he was in and out of the home after that. He would come and live with us, and then, whatever, I don't know, they'd fight or whatever. She'd kick him out. His cheating never stopped. He just kept cheating. And it was I remember, and I don't remember if this had to be after everything. Cause I don't know. Yeah, I think it was after, but he worked at this pizza place, right? I'm telling you, he never had a career. It was just jobs. And I remember my mom with all of us in the car and pulling up, and him and this girl, his girlfriend, are in his convertible car.
Oh gosh.
In the back of the pizza place. And my mom got out of the car and was screaming and going off.
Oh gosh.
And I got out of the car. But I get out of the car and I don't even say anything, right? I'm just a kid. I don't know. I'm not even saying anything. But I remember thinking to myself,
why?
Well, and I remember thinking, does she even know what kind of person he is?
Oh, you felt like maybe she kind of had blinders on. She didn't see it.
I was so angry with her.
Right.
Oh God. and she was a very young white girl with blonde hair.
Oh,
That's
at
what
first I thought
remember.
you were talking about your mom. I'm like, your mom isn't white.
No. I remember those things because as a kid, I remember those things. And as terrible as it sounds, it stuck with me. It stuck with me for a long time. And I'd be like, ugh, like, oh, I don't really, I don't know. She's like one of those little blonde girls, And I would say comments like that about other people. And it's because of
that's who he would pick.
Who he would pick.
Yeah.
And those were the kind of girls he would pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that was just a weird thing that I remember those types of things.
Yeah.
But, I think the only times during that I was really sad were I still wanted a dad.
Yeah.
And I would get sad when they would go do things.
Like
as a family. Like,
but you wouldn't go?
I wouldn't go. But then my mom would be like, well, you say you don't want to go because you don't want to be around him, but then you're getting sad.
Well, yeah, that's still sad.
It's like, well, I don't want to be around him.
But you want to do family things. Yeah. Yeah.
And so those are the moments that would make me sad.
Did you ever try to talk with him and stuff after that? Do you remember?
I think we did here and there. I kind of had to. I mean, there were times where he was like full on living with us.
Yeah. And so before everything happened, do you remember, did you guys have a relationship?
Yeah.
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 And then after, you would have to talk with him sometimes, but you didn't really have a relationship with him.
No. And I remember, so let's go, gosh, let's fast forward a little. So then I remember, no one knew. And my mom, when I was 15, so this is 5 years later, 15, tells me that she's pregnant with my youngest brother.
Mm. Who's a very sweet guy.
The sweetest.
He is.
And he's the best kid out of all of us. He really is, because I think he has a little bit of all of us.
Yeah.
He's strong. He's different. He's unique. He marches to the beat of his own drum, but he's a hard worker,
mm-hmm.
and he's independent, and he's artistic, and he's smart, and he's athletic.
Yeah.
He really is the best of all of us. I don't know how that happened, but I remember having such a hard time with that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I can't imagine what went through your head when she said that.
No,
because I know what I would think, as me, but as you, do you remember?
I remember feeling like, how could you? And how could you
that's what
lay next to a man who's done this to me?
Yeah, that's where my head goes.
Why would you ever want to be with someone who did that to me?
Yeah.
And when I remember we went to my aunt's, which she was living with her and my uncle were living with his mom, so her mother-in-law. And
your aunt doesn't know
she doesn't know and everything. And her mother-in-law was a very, very religious woman. She's really, really a churchgoer, good heart, loves God, can always see the best in a situation, right?
Yeah.
So she knew I was upset. And she's like, well, you're not happy about the baby? And it was I don't know how to answer that. How do I answer that? Because nobody knows what I'm thinking, and I think in a roundabout way, I think I kind of told her in a sense that something had happened. And I just remember her comforting me. And I just remember her telling me, it's okay. It's going to be okay.
To have your feelings, or
it's okay to
everything's...
have your feelings. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay. And you know what? God's blessing you with this baby. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
And I, I did.
Yeah.
And everything worked out, but that was really hard.
Oh gosh.
At 15. And I was very angry for a long time with my mom. And I had reached out a couple of times to my biological father.
Okay.
And I actually went and lived with him for a couple months. Not long, maybe like 3 months. Not long. It didn't last long.
Did he know he
didn't know anything.
Okay.
He didn't know anything.
He just thought you wanted.
He had been he would reach out every once in a while, but honestly, we were so disconnected. He was basically a complete stranger to me. His wife probably kept in contact more with my mom than he did, because she would pick me up and take me to go visit him in jail and that kind of stuff when I would. But after that happened till about my teenage years, I really didn't want to see him, because I really didn't want to see anyone.
Uh-huh.
But then it was like all this stuff. He's in the house all the time. My mom's pregnant with this baby. Like, I just was like, it was building, right? Like the anger, the everything. I hated being home. I hated living at home. I hated it.
And he was there.
And he would always be there, in and out, whatever. And I went to go live with them for a little bit. And it was like living with, I talk about wanting to be with a family. Like I have two brothers on that side. Well, actually I have three now, but I had two brothers at the time that were my dad's and his wife. They had two boys. So I have two brothers, and then my dad was working like graveyards, and then his wife. And I was like a stranger in their house. And I think in their heart, I think my dad really wish I had felt this connection. I think he tried to push it a lot.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I was living with strangers because I didn't want to live at home, because I hated everything there.
You didn't go there like, oh, I really want to know you, and I want to like build this connection. It was like, well, you're kind of the other option.
Yeah. So I did that. It was awful. Hated it. My stepmom was nice, but she had her own issues, and I don't blame her. She stayed married to my dad, who was in and out of jail.
Are they still married?
No, they're divorced now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But she had another kid with them, and then they got divorced. I don't think he just never got it together. She always, I will say on the like taking care of the family and everything, like she always worked. She had great jobs.
That was her.
And housed the kids and everything. Her with me, I think she was, she always wanted to, she miscarried. Actually, she miscarried when I lived there for a little bit.
Oh.
And I had never dealt with anything like that before. That was so hard. Like, I was like, I don't even know. And I'm not even you're connected to these people, and like how, I don't know what to do. And I'm a kid, but she always wanted to have a girl for my dad, she would tell me, so that he could be a dad.
That
to a little girl.
I get your dad wasn't there, but that's still, how could you say that to someone's daughter?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna be like, well, it's not my fucking fault that he wasn't your dad. Like,
you're all, well, he kind of already had a girl and he didn't do a great job.
Yeah.
You sure you want that?
Yeah. I don't know what miracle you think this little baby girl's gonna bring you. But so I think she had a hard time carrying, and then finally later on they got pregnant and stuff. But I was already, after that, I realized I really didn't want to have anything to do with them. And not because, and obviously that sounds harsh because they took me in for a while.
Yeah.
But I just realized I have absolutely no connection, and it wasn't to be mean. It was to be like, I wish you guys the best. I don't wish any ill on any of you. I want you guys to be happy people, successful people, have the best. I hope you guys stay married. I hope you have a wonderful family, but I don't have a spot there.
Right.
I don't feel any connection.
Yeah.
And they're not my family.
Right.
That's not my brothers. That's not my dad. That's not my mom or stepmom or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think even that was hard. Like, so I don't have them. My mom is like with someone who's done nothing but hurt me, and she continues to go back to him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned that, when you have something like that happen to you, you feel alone. And when I said alone, I didn't necessarily mean like I felt alone. Like my sister and I went through it together. Like I wasn't alone. What I meant by alone is you feel like other people haven't gone through it. You feel like people are going to judge you. You feel like people know and they're thinking things about you. That's what I meant by alone. Yeah. But you were literally alone. You didn't have anyone to talk to about this, to help you through it. How long were you suicidal?
I don't really know. I feel like the worst was when we lived in that house. And I used to think like there just must be like really ugly spirits. Mm-hmm. Everything that had happened, it was just an ugly place to ever. Yeah. I wanted out of there. I didn't want to live there.
Yeah.
After that, I really didn't feel suicidal. I think I was more angry.
Yeah.
And realizing I have to just
take care of yourself.
And
you have to.
Yeah.
Like you're the only person that's going to get you through it.
Yeah.
God, of course. Like you had said, yes. You feel like you just had too much God in your heart.
I really do. I feel like if I had not had that relationship and knowing like to just pray.
Yeah.
To just pray. Pray that, you can just survive it.
Right.
Pray that you can just get through the moment. If I hadn't had that, I don't know where I would be. I really do feel like that amount of strength, religion, relationship with God, all of it, and understanding the relationship, because anyone can go to church, anyone can go
that doesn't
devotion.
make a relationship.
I'm not talking about going to church on Sunday. I'm talking about having that true relationship where in your heart you have a relationship that that you can get on your knees in your bedroom, in your closet, wherever you are, and just say, I give it to you.
Yeah.
Because I can't handle it myself.
Yeah.
If I hadn't had that, which I'm very grateful that my mom was involved with that church to give me that for that reason.
Yeah.
Although it could have been maybe a different church.
Yeah. Maybe someone who would have told her not to stay with them.
Yeah. Then, I don't know how I would have been, how I would have carried through some of those times.
Yeah.
Because then we're going back to, well, there's still more.
Still a lot more.
Yeah.
So, we're getting close to the end of this episode. So, before we go, just let's choose a stopping point. So when we start for next week, we can pick right up there. So your mom is pregnant and she tells you that. You go and live with your dad at that point?
I think I may have gone to live with him. Yeah. Either right when she got pregnant. I don't, in all honesty, I don't know.
Yeah. Timelines get funky.
It may have even been right before and then she got pregnant.
Yeah.
It could have been that. Once she was pretty far along with Jaron, I was excited for him. I was excited, and I was excited.
Well, I think, most people, I've known people who a baby is like, are you serious? You had a baby, but it's not the baby. Right. And of course, the baby comes and you love it and you can't imagine life without it. Yeah. But, it's just like the getting to that point is like, ugh. Yeah. So we'll stop here and then next week we'll continue on.
Okay.
Thanks so much for listening, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Segment music by Callie Grace. For more of Callie Grace's hits, follow Callie Grace on iTunes and Spotify today.